Fathers of Reddit. In honor of Father's Day, what was your "don't tell your mother about this" moment? One night when I was about 8, after I had gone to bed, my dad was playing a Nintendo game, Legend of Zelda, I think. We had both been playing it, but we were stuck. He finally found a secret passage, paused the game, and came upstairs to wake me up. He told me he figured out where we were stuck, snuck me downstairs in a blanket. I'm sure my mom knew, and I got to stay up after midnight on a school night, hiding under a blanket, to see where the hidden passage went. It was a silly little incident, but very memorable. Edit, wow. It's one of those blew up overnight situations. Thank you all for the awards and sharing your own versions of the story. I'm glad this warmed so many hearts. Edit 2, don't read if you don't want the feels ruined. A few asked about my relationship with my dad. We actually weren't that close, and still aren't, because reasons. But this story stands out in my memory not just because it was awesome and wholesome, because it wasn't like him. Edit 3, as to the specifics of the game, secret passage, after some Googling, I can't find a Zelda-related secret that matches my memory. I recall a path that is going east then turns south. To the right there's an ocean, and if you just keep going east instead of turning south, there's a hidden path where you can walk over the ocean. We played several similar games with that old top-down view. Could have been Dragon Warrior, 8 Eyes, or so many others. Maybe someone on here can figure it out. Edit 4, thanks to the hive mind for figuring out it was Zelda 2, when you get the water boots and can walk over the water to get to the ocean palace. It's great to fill in the gaps of a nice childhood memory.
Not a father, but I was with my dad and we thought it was a good idea to start a small fire on the porch, the wooden porch. It was made of mostly paper and we made sure to scatter the embers and everything, but after we went inside and to bed, the wind must have kicked up because we came outside the next day and there was a giant hole burned into the porch. My dad just told me, "Hey, don't tell your mom, I'll get it fixed." He then proceeded to cover it with a small table. She found out anyway and we're pretty lucky that the house didn't burn down. Just like the time I was at some friend's camp. Little cabin, water and electric, nothing else. Woke up the next morning and a candle we left burning burnt itself through the can, through the picnic table, and luckily didn't ignite the deck. This last Christmas my 4-year-old helped my wife wrap one of my gifts. It was late so I was working. The next day, while my wife was at work, she came running through from her bedroom first thing and yelled excitedly, "Daddy! Daddy! I helped wrap your gift. It's a surprise, it's a slushie maker." Honey, that's awesome, but you aren't supposed to tell me that. I know, but it's a slushie maker. If you know not to tell me, then why did you tell me? Because I'm just so excited to make slushies with you. I was crying with laughter at this point and told her that it's an awesome gift, but to keep gifts secret, and I told her we wouldn't tell Mummy so she wouldn't be disappointed that I knew what it was. I ended up telling her that evening because it was just too funny and cute. Dad and I used to rent a movie each week for when Mum had dinner with friends. Usually things like Star Trek or action films. One day, I was about 11, he came home with Blade. We got about 10 minutes in and he turns to me and said, "Don't tell your mother about this, let's just say I forgot to get it this week." Of course I agree. Fast forward 7-ish years, Dad blithely drops at the dinner table the fact that we watched Blade when I was about 11. Silly Dad thought there was some kind of statute of limitations on this. Not a real, "don't tell your mother about this" moment, but when I was little, my dad had a workshop in the garage where he'd do woodwork. I'd come out and talk to him while he worked, and he'd let me sit on the car that was parked in the garage. He framed it as something that was so bad and edgy and we couldn't tell my mom, and I was 5, so I believed it and felt so cool without actually doing anything wrong or dangerous. My dad, brother, and I went out to these dunes near where I live with bottle rockets. We each had an empty milk jug and each took like 20 bottle rockets for ammo. Then, we ran around launching bottle rockets at each other. I was the youngest, which made me the hardest to hit, so I won the rocket war. But yeah, Mom never found out. While building the outdoor play set for my 5-year-old, I drilled a screw completely through a board and into my shoe, barely stopping just as the screw broke skin. I swore right in front of him, something along the lines of motherfucking fuck motherfucker. We are sworn to secrecy to this day.
Not a father but a son. We forgot my passport during vacation and were already at the border station when we noticed. My dad then said that we won't turn back but that he will figure something out. Turns out he smuggled me successfully across 3 border crossings without my passport. Before we arrived at home, he told me not to tell my mom about this. Dad was putting new roof shingles on. I was probably 3, maybe 4. I asked if I could help. He said if I could climb the ladder, sure. I was always climbing, so that was no issue. Climbed right on up and started handing him shingles. It would have been a "don't tell your mother" moment had she not come home from grocery shopping. After several back and forth of "where are you?" and "up here, mom," she figured it out and flipped out. What is he doing on the roof? Edit, I'm not a dad, so I posted on behalf of my dad. Daughter speaking for her father. In high school, everybody was always busy at work or clubs, so I was the first one in my household to get home nearly every single day. Dad was having money troubles that he didn't want to disclose to anyone, so he paid me $5 a month to take the bank statement letter from the mailbox and hide it from my stepmom until he got home. It was the closest thing I got to an allowance. P.S. I had no idea what the money trouble was, by the way. I was always the don't ask, don't tell person, so that's why he trusted me the most about this. I have always worked in restaurants and get home late nights. On Fridays I treat myself to takeout. Not just any takeout, the bad stuff. Cheese fries topped with gyro meat, steak nachos with guac. Always a large, always with a big bottle of beer they sell singly. When my girls were little they would sneak down late at night and we would munch bad food and watch really bad funny movies with all the swear words in. My dad used to wake me up at night when I was in middle school to watch Jackass with him. We would be absolutely wheezing with stifled laughter while my mom snored through it all. Thanks for jogging this sweet memory loose in my head, it's been a long time. When my wife's at work, I will take my daughter, 4-year-old, out for breakfast, then we will go on a small adventure around a shop of her choice and pretend whatever she wants. Last time we went to a car parts shop and rolled tires around as we were freeing the rollings from Monster. So far my wife doesn't believe her when she later on grasses me up. TBH, it's the only thing pre-COVID I miss doing. Not a father but a story about mine. One day I decided to pull a sick day at school and came downstairs and saw that my dad was making a coffee. I asked him what he was doing and why he wasn't at work, and he said I could ask you the same question. We stood in silence for a moment and he said, I won't tell your mom if you won't. We had a good laugh about it and he let me have the day off. When I was in middle school I was the only one willing to go shopping groceries with my dad. He didn't want to go alone and my mom was at school studying her master's. None of my siblings wanted to go with him. We used to go to Carl's Jr., have a big breakfast, and then we went grocery shopping. Nobody knew, not even my mom, until years later. He would also let me buy any cereal I wanted. That's actually how I learned how to buy good fruit and veggies, how to order meat and fish, etc. When my siblings found out they were angry because they would have gone if a big breakfast was on the menu. My mom just laughed. Nowadays they sneak to have breakfast together before going grocery shopping since we're all grown up. Edit, thank you so much for the award, Party Popper. My dad has passed away, so I'll tell this on his behalf. My sister was maybe 10 or 11. My dad was very worried and had been waiting all day for us to come home from school. When we got home he pulled her aside saying he needed to have a serious talk with her. He said to her, I was looking for a pencil, and found this in your desk, and pulled out a plastic baggie filled with some dried plant material. She said, oh, catnip. He thought it was pot. We would make little cat toys with catnip and the bag had ripped, so she put it in a Ziploc bag. He sighed a huge sigh of relief and laughed and told her he thought she was doing drugs and asked her not to tell our mom. He was so embarrassed. Not exactly because we were caught in the act, but here we go. When I was 10 years old I was in a head-on car crash with my dad and my little brother. My dad ended up with 2 shattered feet and he was in a wheelchair after getting out of hospital. Now my dad did stereotypical dad things around the house before this happened, and being stuck in a wheelchair was difficult for him. One day while my mom was out, it was just the two of us in the house. Suddenly I'm being called by my dad to go grab the lawnmower and the strimmer. My dad had decided to cut the grass while in his wheelchair. So 10-year-old me does as she's told and grabs what needs to be grabbed and plus everything and is told. I move what needs to be moved into the garden, but there's one problem: Dad can't get into the garden in his chair. The entrance is just too narrow. So my father, being the reckless and mischievous man that he is, comes up with a plan. He's going to lift himself up using the garden wall. I'm to collapse the chair and move it through and then reopen it so he can sit down. The pressure is on. Little 10-year-old me is ready to go. He gets himself up and we manage it in one try. After that, cutting the grass together was fairly simple, but by this point we'd attracted the attention of the neighbors. My neighbor from across the road was frantic when she saw what we were doing. Husbands from other households were joking my dad was making them look bad. Then, the jig was up. Mum was home. I didn't get into trouble exactly, but Mum never let us live down. Edit, spelling. Edit, so this kinda blew up. Thank you for the awards. I'm gonna show my dad all the comments tomorrow. I'm sure he'll appreciate so much talk about his balls. TLDR, my wheelchair-bound father made me an accomplice in his garden mowing escapades. In my second year of college, my best friend committed suicide. We were all pretty heartbroken, so my mum and dad drove up from the next province to be with me. My dad, being a great cook, decided he would cook my roommates, friends and I a nice dinner to bring everyone together during the bleak moment. My dad and I ended up getting completely shit-faced, as one tends to do during heartbreaking times. He got embarrassed at his drunken state, and snuck out the back door and jumped in a cab without saying goodbye. I was upset he disappeared like that, but he also still had the car keys I needed so I could drive my friends and I to the funeral the next day. I called him and asked him to get out of the cab, and that I would meet him at whatever street corner he was at, which he did. When I found him, he was sitting in the stoop of an apartment building puking and crying. I rolled up and together we staggered home drunk and crying arm in arm. When we got back to my apartment, he was still embarrassed, so he asked to sleep in the car. I said okay, grabbed him a blanket, Pringles and a Gatorade for midnight munchies. I go back inside and no sooner did I sit down did I get a text from him saying he was cold and wanted to come in. I went and got him from the car and he was covered in Pringle crumbs. Like, covered. I dragged him up the sketchy spiral staircase to my apartment and the last thing he said before he went inside and to bed was, "God, your stairs are like fucking Hogwarts, man. Please don't tell your mother." And he passed out. It was the moment I saw my dad as a real person, not just my father. I think a lot of fathers try to be strong and stoic for their kids during hard times, in an attempt to be stable for us. Sharing this heartbreaking moment with him just brought us closer together. I love my dad. Man cooks a mean bavette steak.
So friends, what's your comment? Do let us know your feedback. If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button. And turn on the bell icon to get more Reddit delicious video for your daily Reddit dose.